Welcome to Move the Chains with Jonathan Rivers on Fox 54, sponsored by Realtree. Here's your host, Jonathan Rivers.
Let there be football. Welcome to Move the Chains. I'm Jonathan Bam Rivers. And in First Down, I've got my thoughts on the NFL up to this point. A lot of teams are where I thought they would be, and some aren't, but I'm just going to give you some of the biggest points that I've taken away from the NFL through the first 7 weeks or so. Second down, I'm going to do the same thing for college football. Man, people are running for the hills in Tuscaloosa. And I'm just going to talk to you about why Alabama is exactly what I expected them to be up to this point, and I don't mean that in a negative way. And in my nonsense narrative, so one of the biggest games of the season in college football happened last weekend, Georgia, Texas. And a lot of people think that those programs are headed in two different directions based on the outcome of that game alone, and it's crazy. I'm not even going to call it nonsense. I'm going to call it flat out crazy. And in the final drive, there's a program in the Big Ten that has been patient with its head coach and its program and its development of players, and it's definitely paying off to where this team is a legit national title contender this year. All that and more right here on Move the Chains, but you know how we do it. Let's kick it off with First Down. All right, so the NFL. Through week 7, I have some thoughts, and I'm going to share them with you. Give me my first point. The Kansas City Chiefs have a very high floor. So before I even get into why they have a high floor, let me explain to you what I mean when I say they have a high floor. There are teams who have ceilings and floors. Every team has a ceiling and a floor. And as high as you want your ceiling to be, if you're asking me, I want my floor to be high because that means even at my worst, I'm not that bad. I'm going to read some things to you to tell you just exactly how high Kansas City's floor is. They're currently -3 in the turnover margin. Okay? Patrick Mahomes has 7 total touchdowns, 8 interceptions. He's 16th in passing yards, 8th in completion percentage, which might be surprising to some people because he's definitely not been playing well, and 9th in QBR. So with as bad as he's played, with him admitting it as much, he's top 10 in QBR and top 10 in completion percentage. Travis Kelce has how many touchdowns this year? Guess. 0. That's right. Probably one of the best tight ends to ever play the game of football, has 0 touchdowns in 2024. And so far, this is who's been missing with the Chiefs who has not played either the whole year or the past 2 or 3 weeks. Hollywood Brown, whom they signed in free agency to try to be a weapon for Mahomes, hadn't played all year. Rashee Rice suffered a leg injury. He's gone for the rest of the year. Isaiah Pacheco is out maybe until December or January. Mike Dannon, one of their best defensive interior linemen, did not play last week. And Juju Smith-Schuster got hurt in the game and could not finish the game. All that being said, the Chiefs are 6-0. And I'm not sitting here telling you that they don't have room to improve. We know they just signed DeAndre Hopkins via trade, which is going to be huge for them from a possession standpoint, plus it's going to open up the field a little bit more for Travis Kelce. But what I'm telling you is the floor at Kansas City is higher than some teams' ceilings. And everybody says, well, yeah, they're not the best team in the NFL. I think I like Baltimore more. I like Detroit more. Offensively, Kansas City doesn't look good. But their defense is phenomenal, and people know that. But they hold the fact that their offense hasn't been what they wanted to be against Kansas City. Because I've seen what people have done in the past. When Kansas City averaged 40 a game in Mahomes' first few seasons when he won his first MVP, and they gave up 30 points a game, they were still a viable option in those same people's minds. So their offense can be great, but their defense can suck for them to be viable in your eyes. But their offense can be mediocre at this point in time. They're efficient. They just haven't been explosive. And their defense can be great, but they're not what you think they should be. This team has a very high floor, which is why they're still the only unbeaten team in the NFL. All right, give me my next point. Mike Tomlin can't be outcoached. Listen, there are coaches that are good at X's and O's. I think Mike Tomlin is one of those guys, right? He's been on a variety of teams as a defensive coach and a defensive coordinator and now as a head coach for the Steelers for the last almost 2 decades. He's phenomenal. There are some coaches that are culture coaches. Mike Tomlin's definitely one of those guys. When you walk into a Pittsburgh locker room with Mike Tomlin, you know what you're getting. But you also know what you're getting with the Pittsburgh Steelers, considering they haven't even had 5 head coaches in their entire history. But Mike Tomlin is also a coach of his convictions. Now, why do I say he's a coach of his convictions? Russell Wilson started last week against the Jets. If you watch this show, I've been saying all year long that Justin Fields is not the starter for the Steelers. He's a good backup. And I'm going to tell you this, the way Russell Wilson played, if you're a fan of the Steelers, should have you even more excited by what Justin Fields has done. You know why? Because Justin Fields has shown you that as a backup, he can still help you win football games. He can still use his legs. He can make throws at times to get you where you want to be. And the defense is going to be good no matter what. Top 5 defense in Pittsburgh. But Russell Wilson doesn't bring the athletic dynamic that Justin Fields brings. But what he does bring is the acumen, the ability to change plays at the line of scrimmage, the ability to throw the ball down the field. Even if the balls aren't always completed, they take shots, which allows them to do what they want to do best, and that's run the football and play complementary defense. So because Russell Wilson can do those things, he makes the Steelers better, and that's why Mike Tomlin is a coach of his convictions. He says, I know we have something good in Justin Fields, but I feel like we have something greater in Russell Wilson, and that's why Russell Wilson has always been the starter, and now that he's healthy, everybody gets to see that. Russell Wilson will have times where he may struggle this season like any other quarterback. Don't let that trick you into making you think he's not the best option for this team under center, because he is. All right, what's my last point? Jared Goff can't shake the negative narratives. At some point, can somebody tell me why you don't think Jared Goff is one of the best quarterbacks in football? One, I hear so many people on national media and on radio call Jordan Love the best quarterback in the NFC North because of what he did the last half of the season last year. Okay, Jared Goff has definitely won more games than Jordan Love, and I'm a Jordan Love fan. I like Jordan Love. But I think what happens is people have a fixed mentality when it comes to Jared Goff. They look at Jared Goff, number 1 draft pick by the Rams when Steve Fisher was the head coach, and people say that's who he was when he wasn't that great. And then you bring in Sean McVay, and he looks exponentially better. What do? You give the credit to Sean McVay. And then you say, well, the Rams wanted to trade Jared Goff for Matthew Stafford because Jared Goff wasn't that good. No, the truth of the matter is Matthew Stafford is just that good. And at the time was better than Jared Goff, and I think it was a great trade for both teams, and the Rams paid it off by winning a Super Bowl. But have the Lions not paid it off? And yes, Dan Campbell is the rock of that team. Jared Goff said so himself. He's the straw that stirs that drink. He's the culture creator. But Jared Goff has been one of the best play-action quarterbacks in the NFL. He's currently top 10 in passing yards and touchdowns. He's second in completion percentage and only has 4 interceptions. He always takes care of the ball. Let me epitomize how people see Jared Goff. Jared Goff went 18 for 18 with a few touchdowns this season, like didn't miss a pass, and wasn't even the player of the game by his coach because Dan Campbell said, I didn't realize he was perfect that day. I think that epitomizes how great Jared Goff is and how few people give him credit for it. All right, when we come back from the break, I'll give you my thoughts on college football through week 8. We'll be back when we move the chains right after this. Welcome back to Move the Chains. And before I get to second down, I want to take this opportunity, as always, to first and foremost thank my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, for being able to host this show. Secondly, I want to thank you, the fans, for always commenting, coming up to me, telling me how much you love the show, giving me feedback, and supporting the show. Whether you live in Knoxville, Tennessee, or Atlanta, Georgia, or some people that I know that live in Florida that have commented on social media and tell me that they're watching the show via the YouTube channel, and those who are here in Columbus, Georgia, locally, watching it on the Sports Leader Fox 54, I greatly appreciate you. And, of course, I can't forget the best production crew in the business, man. Just get the job done all the time. The show runs smoothly. All the graphics that you see that align with what I'm saying, that's all on the production team. So shout out to the best production crew in the business. But you know what time it is. It's time for second down. I'm really excited about this segment. Give me my first point. Alabama has not been a surprise. Now, I say this, you may say, well, Bam, you telling me that you thought Alabama would have 2 losses by November? No, I'm not telling you that I thought Alabama would have 2 losses by November, but I didn't think a 2 or 3 loss season was out of the realm of expectations or out of an opportunity for Alabama this year. I think it's realistic, and this is why. See, I said at the beginning of the season, 2 things can be true about Alabama. One, they can be a championship contender this year, which they still are today, okay? And secondly, they wouldn't look like they looked under Nick Saban. So, but let me tell you why there's been a perfect storm in how things happen. You know, since Saban took over in 2007, whether interim or head coaches, there have been 72 head coaches that have come and gone through the SEC since 2007. And that doesn't include A&M and Mississippi State, who both have first-year head coaches, nor does that include Oklahoma and Texas, who are in their first year in the conference. 72 different head coaches. Alabama had 1 during that time span, so there was stability in that regard. Secondly, teams like Tennessee, teams like Georgia, teams like Vanderbilt, teams like Texas and Oklahoma that are there now. Like these teams, LSU now under Brian Kelly, these teams were not what they were 5 years ago because Josh Heupel just got there 3 years ago in Tennessee. Brian Kelly's in his 3rd or 4th season at LSU. So now these teams have also gotten better while having a little more stability and not having to change the head coach. Also involved the transfer portal. Now, I'm not making excuses for Alabama. You know I never do that. I sat on this show last week and picked Tennessee to beat Alabama, so I'm not necessarily surprised at the outcome. What I'm telling you is I'm surprised at how many people are questioning Kane Womack. So now I want to talk about credentials. I want to talk about, was this a good hire? I'll just say this. Kane Womack, when he was at Eastern Illinois, in 2015 had the second-ranked team in interceptions defensively, and they were fourth in pass efficiency. When he was at South Alabama, he had the fifth best improvement in the FBS in terms of scoring defense, and they were top 10 in pass defense. And he was at Indiana. They led the nation in picks in 2020. Kane Womack's a good defensive coach. Now, what I will say is I am concerned about the penalties that Alabama has had this year, more than 8 penalties a game. I am concerned that Alabama hasn't been able to get off the field on third down. And when they have gotten off the field on third down, their offense and their defense hasn't necessarily been complementary. Because I told you this team was a big play-reliant offense, and that's what they've shown you, but it hasn't helped their defense. And it also hasn't helped their run game. Because this is a team that I think can take you on a 12, 13-play drive running the football, and they haven't shown it yet. So they're still a championship contender. They just got a lot of work to do. All right, give me my next point. Miami is Cam Ward or bust. And you can think I'm being negative when I'm saying that. Maybe it can be taken as negative. Because I think Cam Ward is the reason, and not the sole, but the biggest reason that Miami is undefeated right now, and they haven't fallen to in some of the games where they should have fallen. Right? When you have the ability to come back like Cam Ward does and this Miami offense does, they lead the nation in passing yards, they lead the nation in passing touchdowns, all that type of stuff that Cam Ward's done. But I'll say this to you. You know who Malik Rozier is? You know? Well, he was a quarterback in Miami in 2017. Last quarterback to lead the Hurricanes to a double-digit win season. That's what the Hurricanes are in line to do right now, especially in the ACC, that outside of Clemson and Miami, some people think Virginia Tech's pretty good. I don't believe in the ACC outside of those two teams in Clemson and Miami. Cam Ward's been doing this his whole college career, guys. 48 touchdowns and 7,000 passing yards in 2 seasons at Washington State. The only thing that's changed about this man is his jersey. And you know what? There was a quarterback in the SEC in 2010, and this team was heavily reliant on his abilities. I can't think of his name. Oh, yeah, it was Cam Newton. And all he did was win a Heisman and help them win a national championship. In college football, at times you can be over-reliant on the talent of your quarterback, especially when he's transcendent, and that's what the Hurricanes have. All right, give me my last point here. Colorado is vastly underrated. So Coach Prime is a dual-threat coach, and this is why I call them underrated. Generally, when coaches come in, they have to win before they get notoriety, right? Well, that was the exact opposite of what Colorado did. When they hired Coach Prime, Colorado immediately had notoriety, but then he had to prove that he could win. And then in his first year, they won 4 games. And now this year, in the year they were picked, 11th or 12th in the Big 12, they're currently tied for 3rd in the Big 12, have already surpassed the number of wins they had last year, and are in line to not only go to a bowl game, but contend for a Big 12 championship. Coach Prime got all the expectations of being Coach Prime without people understanding how bad this program was. Now, there's nobody that can tell me whether you think they're a championship contender, whether you think they're a college football playoff contender or not. There's nobody that can't tell me that Coach Prime got the job done at this program when it was tougher for him to do it here than it could have been anywhere else, including his alma mater in Florida State. All right, when we come back from the break, it'll be my nonsense narrative. You don't want to miss it. We'll be back when we move the chains right after this. Hey, welcome back in, and there's no delay here. It's time for my favorite segment of the show. Let's run the nonsense narrative. Man, I usually don't go off on this program. No, okay, I'm lying. I always go off on this program. But this is what I want to say. My nonsense narrative for this week is that Georgia and Texas are headed in 2 different directions. So what I won't do is I won't sit back and do what I've heard a lot of national television members do and pundits and radio hosts and stuff like that. I'm not going to do what they're doing. I'm not going to retract nor go back nor apologize for picking Texas to beat Georgia at home when Texas had been playing the best in college football and Georgia had not looked like Georgia and the team that they should be. I told you that I thought Texas's identity had been what I thought Georgia would be. I'm not going to apologize for picking Texas. And I want to give a congratulations to Georgia because if Kirby Smart used bulletin material, one, he hadn't had a chance to use it the past two to 3 years because they've been national champions 2 out of the last 3 years. So you really don't have a chance to do that necessarily. And if he needed it and they needed it, hats off that you were able to get it done. But I'm going to say this. Texas is still a national championship contender. So for everybody calling them a phony and a fake, and I'm not just saying this because I picked them, I'm saying this because they're a good team. They have one of the best offensive and defensive fronts in college football, and they've got a quarterback in Quinn Ewers who now has been back for a few weeks and because he was hurt will be healthy. And I'm going to say this about Georgia. What's the biggest difference between the Georgia-Texas and the Georgia-Alabama game? It was just Georgia's defense, who has had to mature because they're young in some areas. They've been dealing with injuries as well, but this is the best game that defense has played by far. And I will tell you this, Georgia got back to its identity a little bit. They gave Trevor Etienne, 19 carries? He should have had 30 because the fact that Carson Beck threw the ball 28 times in the first half is still a problem. In my estimation, I said this before, Mike Bobo knows more about football and has forgotten more than I'll ever know. I really believe that. But if you keep trying to make Carson Beck the Heisman or keep having him throwing the ball all over the field, you're getting farther and further away from your identity, and you showed two sides of each coin in that game. You showed who you could be running the football, but you also showed the detriment if you try to have Carson Beck throw the ball 40 times a game. All right, when we come back from the break, it'll be the final drive. We'll be back with more Move the Chains right after this. Welcome back to Move the Chains. Hey, it's time for the last segment of the show, which means it's time for the final drive. Happy Valley could not be a better way to describe Penn State right now, because they've been patient with their head coach and the development of this program, and it has paid off. Do you remember when James Franklin was hired back in 2014? He came from Vanderbilt and he did a good job, I think winning 8 games at Vanderbilt, which was unheard of back then, and couldn't beat Ohio State or Michigan in the Big Ten. And everybody said, well, he has to try to take a step forward, which I had agreed with. But the athletic department of Penn State didn't rush matters. They didn't say, we're going to get rid of you because you haven't beaten these two teams. They knew what they were building, and they were winning 9, 10 games a year, getting to New Year's 6 bowl games and doing a good job. Now they're the number 3 team in the country, and they have an opportunity to possibly win a national championship. Still got Ohio State down the road. They still got Michigan, but these are games that Penn State is more equipped now to win. And I'll just give you a point of comparison. Since 2014, James Franklin's been at Penn State. Since that same time, Auburn's had 5 head coaches. Enough said. All right, don't forget, you can not only catch Move the Change right here on the Sports Leader WXDX Fox 54, but you can also catch us on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. It's at @move_the_change. Like, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment. We're here for all the smoke, and we love that you're participating. All right, as always, another banger for my boy James Franklin for the best production crew in the business. I'm your boy Jonathan Bam Rivers. Until next time here on Move the Chains, God bless.